everyone, and welcome to this non-spoiler slash kind of spoiler review for 28 years later here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Really excited to dive in to talk about my thoughts on this movie because I've been a fan of the 28 Days Later franchise in the past. Really enjoyed the first one. I remember when I was living in LA, they were showing a special screening of it in San Diego, where I currently live now. And we jumped into the car, me and two of my friends, and we drove all the way down here to catch a special screening of the sequel. So I have always had this thing kind of in my blood. So here we are, all these years later, coming in with a third installment. It's simply called 28 Years Later. We skipped 28 months later, apparently. And this one goes back and forth in time, starting out when the rage virus first hit. We meet this young kid, Jimmy, who is the son of a priest. And we see what happens to his mom and his playmates. We see what happens to his dad, who welcomes in the rage virus as sort of a payment for humanity, as kind of a doomsday thing. So then the film jumps 28 years later, and we meet Spike, who's played here by Alfie Williams, a relative newcomer to acting, and his dad, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Jodie Comer there as Spike's mom. And we see that they are, Jamie and Isla, they are all in this makeshift town that's separated by this main thoroughfare to the mainland. So this kind of mini island that they're kind of cocooned in, and they have strong protections. They have a strong community. They make food. They wash their clothes. Like, we get a taste of the town, and we also see that Isla is suffering from something that is affecting her mind, affecting her brain, which we'll find out later in the movie. We see Spike and Jamie go out, and Spike is 12 years old, and he gets his first kill. We see these really creepy, crawly zombies that eat worms. I'm just going to say zombies to mean the rage virus. I don't know. If you want to be upset about that, fine, feel free. But it's essentially trying to intimate that they are zombies. He gets his first kills and then gets scared when they chase them down. And we meet this thing called an alpha zombie, in essence. And that is an interesting new aspect to this movie. They end up escaping, getting back to their fort, and they celebrate it and all this kind of stuff. But then Spike sees that his dad is hitting on another woman because Isla, Spike's mom, is suffering through some things. And clearly, Jamie is already moving on, knowing that she is going to die at some point. Well, Spike gets upset about this, pushes away his father the next day, takes his mother and sneaks out across that walkway that only can be seen in low tide, go to the mainland, find this doctor who is played by Ray Fiennes. We find out what's wrong with his mom. And in the end, Spike is growing up throughout the whole movie and then runs into who will be probably the main villain of the second film, played by Jack O'Connell, and that is a character named Jimmy, who we find out is essentially the young kid from the beginning of the movie when the rage virus first broke out. So that's the basic plot of what you see here in the movie. So I will say this, I enjoyed watching the film, but I didn't think this was as strong or as powerful or as scary of an installment as the first film and even the second film. And I know some people have their issues with the second film, and I totally understand that. I did enjoy the second movie. It's not as good as the first, but I don't think this film is as good as the second or the first movie. And that's what left me a little bit disappointed. And I got to start with the things that I just didn't 100% buy into. And I got to say this, I think Alfie Williams, the kid who plays the main lead in this movie, isn't 100% there for me emotionally in a lot of the scenes. I don't really get invested in what's going on with him, invested in his relationship with his dad, invested in his relationship with his mom. There's just not a lot there for me to grab onto. So I couldn't feel the elements of the loss of his mom or the anger towards his dad. I couldn't feel all of that. So even when he came and we got to the end and he had really embraced his power and he's growing up and he's no longer the scared kid who is running away from the rage zombies, being unable to shoot them with his arrows, I not 100% like on board to cheer him on. And I imagine he's going to be our main protagonist through these three films. So hopefully in the second film, I'll feel a little bit more for him. I'll connect a little bit more with his performance. I'm not saying he delivered a bad performance. I'm just saying I didn't 100% connect to it. That may be where my main issue lies, though, is some of the writing here, which is hard for me to say because, as I said, I really enjoy Alex Garland's work. But I do think some of the scenarios, some of the situations don't seem to make sense. How Spike is able to trick everybody to be able to escape with Isla, I think is a little bit ridiculous. They're manning the gate. Some kid running up and going, hey, you got to get out of here. This thing's on fire. The way that all happens doesn't make sense. Plus, Isla's moment where she takes the bag and slams the head of the crawling zombie there in the church, she wouldn't remember that. Like, she wouldn't have any kind of conversation. And I know the brain stuff is affecting her, but there are moments of clarity. So in no moment of clarity, does she not wake him up to be like, what is going on? Why am I here? Why is this zombie attacking you or this rage zombie attacking you? Like, I think there would have been something there. So it's stuff that doesn't 100% connect with me. And we're just handed this town. We don't get to spend a lot of time in this town. We don't get to understand who people are and what their roles are. How was this town created? How was this situation put together? I mean, when you look at A Quiet Place Part 2, there is also a town where they hide out in, but you understand how the town was built. You get that explained to you. There's a little bit of background, but there's not that delivered here. It's just it's handed to you, you accept it, and then you move on. I also think the film is missing that horror terror that you felt in the first two installments and you're supposed to feel here. I didn't sense that. I wasn't, I mean, there was like I said, when the alphas chase them down, that's a lot of tension, yes. And there are some brutal kills when Eric dies and his spine is ripped out. Like we see the deer's head being ripped out. It's pretty scary, but there was much more of it in the first two movies. There's not that element here, that rage, madness, and people being killed who you care about in the movie. And it is frustrating for me as I was watching it because I wanted to be scared out of my mind. That's why I go to these films. But it was a much more languid approach to telling this kind of horror. And I found myself being a little disappointed by that. But I get it. You could say human horror in a family situation, but it doesn't quite work out that way. But I will say, I like Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie. I think he's very good as his father, and his father who has a bit of these kind of archaic approaches to manhood and kills and celebrating his son, even though he's lying about some of the things his son has done. And also his idea that, well, my wife's died. I'm already going to move on to the next woman I'm going to be with. So there's a lot of toxicity around his father, but his father is also very calm and aware of things and can handle himself with a zombie. So I like what Aaron Taylor Johnson does here. And I really love what Jodie Comer does here. Yet again, another standout performance from her. She is just such an incredible actress. And the way she plays this character who is suffering through what we find out later is brain cancer that's either metastasized and moved from her body to her brain or from her brain down to her body. We see her having these episodes, these moments of anger and these moments of rage, and also these moments of really quiet tenderness as she's lost in who she thinks Spike is. Sometimes it's her son, sometimes she thinks it's her dad. So there's really sweet moments mixed in with these moments of real sadness and horror, I guess, in a way. Because if you've ever had a parent who suffered through cancer, as I have, there are some horrifying moments. There are some really scary, terrifying moments because you want to do everything possible to keep them alive, and it is heartbreaking as you watch their body essentially betray them because of this horrible disease and illness. And I get that the intention here was to show what the horror is like of someone who has brain cancer and the almost rage virus-like reactions they have to it. And we see that throughout the movie with Jodie, but I don't think it was established as firmly enough as I would have liked it to be established in order to really feel that connection and feel myself caught up in her story throughout this latter half of the movie. Ralph Fiennes, I think, is fantastic in the film as well. I really bought into what he was doing here as Dr. Kelson. I like that he's painted himself with this iodine. I like that he's built these bone towers, which of course is the title of the second movie. And I love that he's got this approach to the world. Yes, he's unhinged. Yes, he's crazy, but he also seems like a kind of guy who you could actually reason with and have a logical conversation with. He's not mad to be mad. The situation has drove him mad, and he has found some semblance of beauty in his mind in the situation, and what he's done in building these towers of skulls and protecting himself with these other towers that he's built there in this area of the forest is pretty badass. And I like what he's able to do. And so I enjoyed him in the movie. I also want to give a shout out to Eric, and that is Edvin Writing. I think he's a really fun part of the movie as well, as a soldier who saves Spike and Isla. I really liked what he did and the energy he brought in as a Swedish actor. I've never seen him in anything. And I bought into the situation. I like the sarcasm and the back and forth and the ball busting and the funny moments that occur with him. And the death of him is super brutal. And I will say this, the alpha rage zombie is pretty awesome. The idea of having essentially an alpha of the pack that understands how to hunt, understands when to hunt, understands the ferocity with which to hunt is super unsettling. And when he's chasing down Spike and Jamie, when they're running across that walkway there that connects them to the mainland, it is tension filled, which I thoroughly enjoyed as well. When he is attacking Kelson and Spike later on and ripping through the earth to get to them, you see the ferocity, and that's a new element of the rage virus that I really enjoyed. We also get a new element of a baby. Now, I don't know this, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an OBGYN. I don't know how a baby is protected from the rage virus being in a placenta, but apparently that's possible. So that's a whole new element to the mythology of these rage virus people. And listen, there is precedent in the franchise for these people to possibly be still somewhat human. If you remember in the second movie, one of those rage virus, I think it's the military guys, catches himself in the mirror and sees himself in the mirror and stops and looks at himself in the mirror. So he's possibly, you could argue that maybe he doesn't understand what a mirror is because he's so far gone in his mind and thinks it's another person. But no, it looks like he recognizes himself and he's trying to rip away from whatever is happening, or some semblance of his conscience understands what is happening. But he can't stop what is happening. And when the woman on the train has the baby, I think that's an incredible moment with Isla putting hands on it, holding, like, that's a human moment between Isla and the rage virus woman who's having the child. And is the child the alpha male's child? I've heard some people speculate that it might be Kelson's child, because he's the one that's been experimenting on Samson, in essence, the alpha. Did he experiment with her? Did he inject her with his sperm? Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of possibilities in that, but I liked those elements of the movie. Now let's deal with the two big talking points that everyone seems to be going on and on about in their reviews for this movie. Isla's death in the film, I think, is actually really beautiful. I've seen some people pushing back on it, and not happy with it, but I think it's actually really beautiful. As someone who has suffered through a parent dying of cancer, there was a moment where my father talked to me and was like, well, how would you react if I took my own life? Because the pain of this is too much. And I talked my father out of it, and we spoke about it very openly and honestly. Not there wasn't aggression, there wasn't meanness. It was very honest, and I accepted where he was. I understood where he was, but I encouraged him to keep fighting, because to set an example for his kids and for himself, and so it was, but that was his personal decision. If my father had decided to take his life because of the pain of cancer, I would not have judged him in any way, shape, or form. So in this moment, when Isla hears from Dr. Kelson what she has and understands that she may die soon, in a world of madness and rage-filled zombies where you've lost all your control that you can possibly have, because at any moment something could happen that kills you or kills your child or kills your husband, she wanted to take some semblance of control. She was going to decide how she died. And I think there's a power in that. Now, you all may not agree, and that's your right, but I thought that was really powerful and beautifully done. And of course, you have to sedate Spike because he's going to try to stop Kelson and stop his mom from doing this, because he wants to keep her alive by any means possible. And I certainly understand that feeling, having experienced it myself. So, but I think the way it's done is actually really beautiful. And what it ends up being in her skull, and putting her skull at the top, and then turning to see the sunrise together. He almost has his arm around her skull. I think it's a really sweet way to end their relationship and have hers have some semblance of control as a final step before she leaves the earth, because of the madness that's going on. Now let's deal with the ending. I know the ending is very controversial. A lot of people think it's funny, making the Power Rangers references and what have you, but I understood the ending because I am an Anglophile, and I understood what they were referencing when it came to the ending and the person they are basically emulating here, which is Jimmy Savile, who was a prominent British TV and radio personality, revealed as one of the UK's most prolific sexual predators, and he abused children and adults of both genders, using his fame and charity work to gain access to vulnerable individuals. Now, I'm not going to recommend you watch this, but if you would like to have a bigger understanding of Jimmy Savile, there's a Netflix documentary that came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, that is pretty brutal and unsettling to watch, and horrific to see that this is a human being who did this thing for such a long time. And so many people who had suspicions or possibly knew about it kept quiet about it and let it happen because he was such a big personality and so famous. So the fact that they are alluding to this with the way that Jack O'Connell is dressed and the way his whole crew is dressed, yes, it's a little ridiculous when they jump into Power Ranger moves. But if you understand British horror, and if you've read comic books, a little bit of these kinds of groups that pop up when you're reading, especially if you read The Walking Dead, there's all kinds of weird ass groups that pop up and become cults in essence because of what's happened. So to me, although it was slightly ridiculous, I got what they were going for. And they're going to be the main villains in the second movie, because Jimmy said, let's be pals, and they shook hands. It's going to be Spike with the baby, trying to navigate that whole situation. Now, will he fall in with the cult? Will he rebel against the cult? I don't know. Will we see Cillian Murphy in the second movie as a connective tissue to lead him out of that cult? I don't know. But it lets you know this is the kind of cult it's going to be. If they're emulating what this guy did in life, they are going to do some pretty horrible things to people and violate people's humanity in ugly and brutal ways. And I think Danny Boyle talking to Alex Garland about the trilogy, that this first film was about family and the second film is about the nature of evil. So I imagine we're going to explore all of that with Jimmy's crew. So overall, though, I give the film 3.5 cowboy hats out of 5 cowboy hats. I really went in wanting to love it, wanting to enjoy it, wanting to get my ass scared off. But instead, it was much more of a slower paced, languid, lethargic approach to horror that I think some of the moments certainly worked. As I mentioned stuff earlier in the review, But overall, the power of it didn't hit me as hard as the first one and even the second one, because I like the idea of Robert Carlyle and his wife and his kids and who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. So you still have the horror elements outside of everything with the family, but then there are horror elements within the family with a husband lying or a father lying to his kids about what happened with his wife and then having to confront that stuff. And then him killing his wife because of the rage virus being infected from his wife when they kiss, and then him having to confront his son and their daughter having to deal with the after effects of all of that. For me, I like that element in the second one, even if maybe the film itself didn't hold together as strongly as the first one. And I think that was missing here, and I wanted more of that. Well, if you got a chance to see it this weekend, or you're going to see it this weekend, I want to hear what you think about it. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. What stood out to you? Do you think there was enough horror elements here? Or do you think it wasn't quite as strong as you wanted it to be? What was missing? Or did you enjoy? Did you thoroughly like Alfie Williams here as the lead? Did you enjoy all the performances? Did you enjoy the nature of the relationships that were going on here? And Dr. Kelson, Ray Fiennes' character. What are your thoughts on the controversial moments here with one of the rage virus zombies having a baby, the death of Isla, and at the end, the appearance of Jimmy and his crew there? So let me know all of it down in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching this review. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new review here on the Outlaw Nation. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content from the Outlaw Nation.